Hey, everybody. Before we get to the show, I wanted to thank those of you who've joined us on Patreon to become members of our Patreon community. It's so great to have so many of you from all over the world. Andrea, one of the perks of the Patreon community membership is a monthly Zoom call. Tell us more about that.
You get a Zoom call every second and third Thursday. So that's with the three of us on the second and third Thursday of the month.
And Dr. Cooper, two different levels. So the second Thursday of the month is for one level. The third Thursday of the month is for the other level. Tell us more about the different levels on Patreon and what those mean.
Yes. One of the levels is for the general public, our regular listeners, and it'll be a live Q&A. Bring your questions, and we'll try to answer as many as we possibly can. And the other level, the higher level, is for, we call it Pro. It's for healthcare professionals. And the general public's welcome to join that one. But it will be answering more technical questions, probably, in that live Zoom call.
And I feel like the importance of this is that the discussions that are taking place more frequently now between patients and providers are so important for guaranteeing, a good treatment and a good addressing of the issue of metabolic dysfunction. There's power in community. So we just wanted to say thanks, everybody, for joining us on Patreon. All right, let's get to the show. Welcome to Fat Science. I'm Mark Wright, along with Andrea Taylor and Dr. Emily Cooper. It's great to see you two.
Hi.
Hello.
All right, on the show this week, we're taking on one of the most surprising and, I think, frankly, confusing topics in metabolic health, and that is how exercise can actually make your metabolism worse. This goes against everything that anyone has ever told us about exercising and fitness. And this happens even when we think we're doing everything right. Joining us are two special guests, and some of you will remember Russell Cunningham. He's been a past guest on the show. Russell is an exercise expert who used to run up and down mountains while massively underfueled. That sent his metabolism into a tailspin. Well, now he's an exercise physiologist and rehabilitation counselor with 18 years of work alongside Dr. Cooper. Russell, always good to see you. Welcome back.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Also on the show, we're thrilled to welcome Becca Wert. Hi.
Hi.
Becca's story may sound familiar to a lot of you listening. She loved working out and lost weight, and then she watched the weight come back, and then some. She was dieting, exercising, and doing everything that she thought she was supposed to do, but her metabolism had other plans. Here's the catch. When Becca stopped exercising during COVID, the weight started coming off. Yeah. So, welcome, Becca.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you both. Dr. Cooper, I'd love for you to kind of set the table right now. This is such a wonderful pairing of people because you have a crazy extreme athlete and then you have an everyday person who worked out for years with a personal trainer and their bodies got to the same point of rebellion. And I'd love for you to explain how does that happen in two cases like this that are so kind of extremely different?
Yeah, it really is fascinating, but it's a perfect way to talk about metabolism and how our metabolism is so sensitive to both our actual energy availability and its perception of our energy availability. But whether you're an extreme athlete or you're someone with genetics for major obesity, you can be affected metabolically by exercise in an opposite way that you would think. And if we're going into exercise and our body perceives it as a threat to our nutritional stability or our energy availability, it can actually put the brakes on your metabolism.
Wow. So we're going to be talking about, how we've talked to you guys listening, about fueling your exercise and why that is so important. We'll get to that a little bit later. But Russell, take us back to the mountains. When did your training, what did it look like back at the height of your, I'm going to call it craziness because we're friends. What did that look like? Like, how much were you doing? How little were you eating?
It's actually kind of a more complicated story than, there's a lot to it. Let's say originally when I was getting into the overtraining syndrome, I I honestly, like, it's hard to remember because it was like 20 years ago now, but um, it was just sort of like an obsession with constantly working out. And it was more obsession with exercise than it was about not eating. It's just that the math equation caught up to me. But what's interesting when you said like height of my training, or I'd frame it as like height of my personal experiences in the outdoors, really. That was many years later, and the my performances and strength and power were just like way higher. I'd say strangely, like now in my early 40s, I'm actually a better athlete than I was when I was 20 by in a lot of ways. And I do a lot less training now than ever. And I just basically focus on kind of what Andrea says, like enjoy food as much as possible, and like I try not to overthink it anymore, and just honestly like enjoy it. Like as long as I'm feeling good, that usually correlates to being well fueled and also well rested. And I think that's a topic that later in the podcast to talk about, like sometimes fueling isn't enough. Sometimes it's just purely the exercise itself that becomes a problem, even when you are fueling it.
And you enjoy the workout and the training.
Oh yeah, I mean it's that really is the core of it, right? Like life is supposed to be enjoyed, and I was in France this last summer, and I just looked around at the way folks over there live, and they're carrying around croissants and baguettes and piles of cheese, and everybody's just so happy and healthy. I'm just like, wow, we've got a lot to learn.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And Becca, your story is really different from Russell's. Like, when did you think that like working out all the time wasn't doing the result? It wasn't giving you the results that you thought you should have.
Yeah, so I was working out with a trainer 3 days a week for an hour, and also going to Weight Watchers, like doing
All the
the
things you're supposed to
right, exactly,
that our mothers
um,
told us.
exactly, literally, like
That's what I
I
mean. Like literally everything your mother
exactly,
told you to do, and
yeah,
then
and not seeing any results, right?
we're boink.
I yeah, and I I got up to over 360 pounds. And I'm just
Hmm,
like, and nothing is happening, right?
right.
I'm
Sounds
I'm
familiar.
doing all of these things, and I had a friend that I worked with who was actually seeing Dr. Cooper first, and I noticed progress happening with her. And she's like, "Here, look at this website." And so she had sent me to Dr. Cooper's website, and I looked at some of the testimonials there, and I'm like, "This sounds like me," because one of the people had said that they were training for a triathlon and that they were gaining weight training for a triathlon. I'm like, "Okay,
And you're like,
that's
how did
not
that
me."
happen?
I'm like, yeah, there's no way I'm doing a triathlon, but at the same time, like, but I'm working out way more than some of my friends who have a standard body type, right? And when I ask them how much they're working out, they're like, "Yeah, I work out so hard that once a week workout is just terrible." I'm like, "I'm sorry, what now?"
Right.
So, uh, and I'm just like, but I'm restricting my calories. I'm writing literally everything down that I eat, and I can't seem to break through, and I don't know why. And so I'm like, I obviously need to try something different because everything that I'm supposed to be doing is not doing
Right.
anything.
And you almost feel like you don't believe you. It's
Yeah.
like, how could I be working out, eating less,
Mhm.
and I'm still fat? Like, how does this happen?
Exactly. I mean, and I even like I changed trainers. I went to like 3 different trainers, and it was always so interesting going to a new trainer because they wouldn't believe that I had seen a previous trainer, and so they'd try to work me out slower, and I'm like, "You don't understand how strong I am. You don't understand like the conditioning I already have. Like let me show you what I can actually do." And so they'd be like, "Oh, you actually." Yeah, I'm like, "I've been doing this for a while. Been doing this for a while." And but it didn't matter. Like I had great muscle that I had established, but there was just so much
Right.
fat on
It's
top of
like your
it that
body's so mean to you.
Oh,
exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, so Dr. Cooper and I have been saying we're like, it's like Scooby Doo. We have to figure out the mystery about what's
yeah,
actually going to break through. I'm like, I love
yes,
that.
I love Scooby Doo.
Yeah.
Becca, were other doctors telling you things like maybe you need to eat less and work out harder, or what were they telling you?
Oh, always. I mean, Weight Watchers was one of the things. I think my favorite though was when they're like, you should try a guided meditation.
Oh,
So that was they're just like try it, and so I'm like, I mean, I guess that would help with relaxation, but at the same time, because it was supposed to be a hypnosis. It was actually a hypnosis.
oh yeah.
And I'm like, so it was instead of getting an actual surgery. It was a hypnosis surgery, something. And I'm like, I listened to it and I'm like, no, this isn't for me. One, it didn't do anything, but second, actually listening to it was just bizarre. So,
Dr. Cooper, I'd love to have you explain why, when a lot of us come to you, one of the first things that you do is to tell us to stop exercising, and that surprises most of us, and we don't understand it at that point. How do you decide when a patient first comes to you when to back off exercise because it really is triggering dysfunction?
It's actually pretty easy to detect because, first of all, listening to people's history, and that's one clue. And whether it's someone like Russell that, was obviously too attached to the exercise. Let's face it, Russell, when you first started, it was, the exercise had become, as Russell said, like more of an obsession, the level of it. And Russell loves exercise, but then getting really into it to the point of maybe ignoring some of the body signs and signals. And with Becca, it's just that typical story that you hear with people that are really challenged by high body weight that are experiencing this kind of thing. It seems to me, just maybe because of just my knowledge of the metabolic system and working with patients for decades, it just now, I can look at it and it seems really obvious why it's happening. But in the beginning, it wasn't so obvious. When I first started doing this, I thought, kind of not as extreme as what Becca experienced with these kind of bogus treatment options. But I did think, well, maybe it's just people are not knowing exactly what they're burning. So let's get this fancy equipment and measure their metabolism when they're at rest and when they're exercising. And get the fuel dialed in. And as Russell said, sometimes when you do that, it still doesn't seem to be, quote, working. So that led me to look more into the metabolic system and what was really going on. And so then you can have people like Russell, where the clues in Russell's history are not just the history of what he was doing, but the laboratory evidence. And with that, you can see things because Russell may not have been prone as much to the big weight gain, maybe, although he did experience a lot of weight gain for his body. It wasn't as extreme because he genetically wasn't prone to that. While he was genetically maybe prone to more health complications that had to do with metabolism, and we could see some of those aspects on his blood work. But in addition to that, testosterone levels, were affected. And as Russell was describing, the overtraining syndrome picture, which is, you can see that with the blood levels of cortisol and ACTH hormone, these different hormonal markers that kind of clue you in that there's either a true energy deficit going on or a perception of an energy deficit. So that was for Russell's case. And then for Becca, it almost was worse on Becca's lab work, the sense of an energy deficit in there, because as we've described before, it just seemed that the brain was blind to the fact that Becca was carrying this extra weight. And the way we can see that is we look at leptin levels. So Becca's leptin levels were low. Leptin is a hormone produced by the body fat that's supposed to tell the brain, I weigh enough. And it wasn't saying that. And then at the same time, Becca's famine signals, the ones from the brain and the stomach, ghrelin from the stomach, and neuropeptide Y and agouti-related peptide from the brain, those were all elevated. Those were famine signals. So, most people would say, you can't have a person at that weight with elevated famine signals. They would just assume that that's not possible. But it's not true. It is possible. And some people are very sensitive to energy deficits or perception of energy deficits, and their body goes into this conservation mode. So for both Russell and Becca, their bodies were going into a conservation mode. So anytime we see that clinically, it's really good to back off the exercise, because what is exercise? You're using fuel. It's creating a demand for fuel. So if your body thinks and perceives that you're in a low energy state, that could be seen as a threat to your body. And so what does the body do? Fight it by conserving energy elsewhere and trying to figure out, well, how do I slow down the metabolism over here and here and here to compensate, because I can't slow it down while you're exercising because you're spending the energy. So hopefully that makes sense.
So, Becca, your weight dropped during COVID because you weren't exercising. So what did that tell you about your metabolism?
Told
As
me
you
it
were
wasn't.
sitting on the couch.
I know, right? It told me it wasn't what I expected it to be. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
weird, huh?
Yeah, it wasn't standard, honestly. It's what Dr. Cooper had been telling me.
The whole counterintuitive thing.
Exactly. And so I was really starting to realize that um, I needed to fuel myself differently, right? It wasn't, I needed to think about things in a completely different way. Because I'd been working with Dr. Cooper for a few years, and I had lost some weight, but I had plateaued. I think it was for almost 2 years at that point. Um, and so it was like, how do we get over that plateau? And yeah, I just had to start sitting at home, not doing a whole lot, and it just started falling off. And it was, yeah, thinking about how my metabolism was starting to work. I'm like, I guess I really do need to fuel myself. I guess I'm really under fueled. And seeing and understanding some of these hormone markers that we were looking at for the starvation markers, I'm like, oh, yeah, I understand how my body thinks I'm starving, even though no one in society
Right.
could understand this, right? Which I just find absolutely fascinating, but it's exactly what was happening.
And
Yeah.
Becca, you were working out 3 times a week for years.
hmm Yeah, for over 8 years. Yeah, yeah, and sometimes additionally on my own. Like that was just with the trainer, right? But
Right.
then I'd like go on walks with friends. I would do like group classes or whatever. So yeah, that was just with the trainer. Yeah.
Wow. So Dr. Cooper Russell talked about thyroid suppression. Explain that if you would, and how important that is. That's one of the markers when the metabolism starts to shut down, right?
Yeah, it really can be. So when the metabolism shuts down, the orders to shut it down come from the brain. And there's the hypothalamus produces hormones called releasing hormones. That is kind of where the production of reproductive hormones, thyroid hormones, our cortisol, it all starts there at the hypothalamus with these releasing hormones. Then those send a signal further downstream to the pituitary gland, and then the pituitary gland releases stimulating hormones that stimulate those end organs, whether it's the reproductive glands or it's the adrenal gland or it's the thyroid gland. Those stimulating hormones stimulate those glands to produce their hormones, and there's a feedback loop. So what ends up happening if there's a perception of energy deficit, the hypothalamus tones down its releasing hormone signals, even though that maybe the hormone levels that are feeding back are not necessarily high at all. Maybe they're just normal, but then the brain says, well, if we want to conserve energy, we've got to start reducing the production of some of these hormones because it's using up energy to make your reproductive hormones at the levels that they should be. It's using up energy to make your thyroid hormones stay in a normal range. And this is what really leads to like both the overtraining syndrome picture, the physiology there, as well as just the metabolic slowing that occurs in people who've been chronically underfueled or just the perception of being underfueled is in there due to other, hormone imbalances that go with genetics of obesity and diabetes. So that's how it all works. And now the people can have an actual thyroid problem, which is separate from this. So this would be a way that the pathway slows your thyroid down even when you don't even have a thyroid problem. and it slows down. People think of cortisol going up when we're stressed. It does, but when you go to this extreme level, it starts to actually bottom out more because the releasing hormone from the hypothalamus says to the pituitary, stop telling the adrenal to produce that cortisol, because cortisol does give us energy and it mobilizes energy for us to use. And so that pathway slows down too. And so now we know that overtraining syndrome is really a nutrition mismatch. It's not due to over-exercising. It's really due to insufficient fueling for the exercise. So in any case, it's all controlled through the brain. And that's that's clues that we see on our blood work. It's kind of a classic, predictable picture. You'll see the signals from the pituitary being kind of low, and you'll see the hormone output from the gland being kind of low. And that doesn't make sense, because if it's a feedback loop, it's supposed to be the signals from the pituitary go up to try to stimulate more hormone production. But here it's saying, no, you're not authorized to produce those hormones at those levels. And it's good reason. Like, look at men with testosterone. If they're allowed to produce that testosterone, they have a lot more energy, and they're going to go out and do more things, and they're going to spend more calories and more fuel doing it. And so a good way to stop that is stop that cycle, make them feel tired and sluggish. And like,
Wow. So that's why when I came to you, my testosterone level was in the basement.
Yeah.
But that was my body saying, we need to conserve energy. You can't, if the testosterone levels were higher, I would have been spending more energy, right?
Totally. And same
Wow.
with the thyroid. The thyroid actually lets us stay warm too, produce heat to stay warm. So it slows that down. It kind of turns your core temperature down a little to conserve energy, so you're not spending so much energy keeping your body warm. There's all kinds of stuff that the body can do to adapt to the perception or the actual situation of famine.
So let's talk about adding exercise back in. Becca, you tried to add exercise back into your routine. What happened?
So just at the mention of entering exercise back in, so I approached Dr. Cooper with this. I'm like, I know that I've been losing significantly. I think I'm down about 125 pounds. This is great. I'm not at the end of my journey, but I've gone a long way. So I'm like, when do we start incorporating back in? So we're like, okay, let's come up with a game plan. She wrote me a great game plan together. I was nervous about it, not gonna lie. I'm just like, okay, just at the mention of incorporating exercise back in, my body completely stopped losing weight. I was losing very regularly,
Yep.
and then it just stopped. I hadn't even started yet. I hadn't even, because I was like, maybe I'll dip my toe in. And I'm like, and I was honest with her. I'm like, I saw her 3 months later. I'm like, okay, so I haven't actually started yet. And when I got back on the scale, I lost nothing. So it was so now we're trying to figure out what my body's thinking, because my body is just stressed out by the idea of going back to exercising. So yeah, we're trying to work that through that now. I'm like, Dr. Cooper, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, but yeah, it's interesting.
It
Yeah.
is really interesting. And, I was looking at your stats because,
Mhm.
you had the hypertension that was stage 2 initially. And then, so your blood pressure overall down 9%, your cholesterol LDL particles down 57%. I mean, you're way healthier
Mhm.
even without doing this exercise.
Yeah.
But we just are thinking, gosh, you should be allowed to be active without your body rebelling so much. So it's true. It is kind of like we've got to figure out the way. And I think when you think about it, of course, it starts with fueling, being so on top of the fueling and being so flexible with your diet, like incorporating all the foods, not having any rules about it, trying to get that to just gain the trust, making sure you're sleeping well, of course. But aside from that, it's kind of like it's not I don't know, it's psychophysiological, I guess, because I think
Right.
it's more subconscious. I mean, I'm sure your psychology affects it too. Because when we think of our hypothalamus, it's such a sophisticated little laboratory in there, and it's picking up on everything, not just the chemistry levels circulating in our bloodstream, but our thoughts about what we're planning to do and how we feel about it, how we feel about our body emotionally. I mean, it's picking up everything. You cannot hide anything from it. So I think it's going to take some work to just figure out, okay, how do you flip it so that the perception, of the exercise is totally like a total fueled, energy fueled event or something like that, where you can convince your brain that it's not the same as the past memory that it has stored in there from the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah, because I like to move. I like to
I
do these
know.
things, right?
Yeah.
It's not that I don't like to. It's just making sure that I do it in the right way and wanting to, but at the same time, I hate using those words because I feel like the right way has been
Yeah.
used so much.
Yep.
it, it
Yeah.
has been a stigma in the media that I need to like let go also, right? So it's
Yeah.
more just like I want to go because I know that I have lost strength that I used to have. And so that's why I want to gain some tone back that I don't have quite as much of anymore because I've been more stagnant because that's what's been
You want
helping
to
me
be
lose the weight.
strong. Yeah.
Exactly.
You'd like to
So
be
yeah,
strong. And you do
exactly.
have, I think you did a body comp, you had good lean
I did.
mass too, still.
Yeah, yeah. So my
Really
lean
good.
mass is still good, but
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where I'm like,
Yeah. You want
but
to
I've
get
no, yeah,
functionally strong.
exactly.
Another strategy I use for people, whether it's Russell or Becca, like this, would be, even though it sounds crazy to most people, sports drinks. Even when you're doing a very short thing, usually we think of sports fueling for longer workouts, but people that are sensitive, that could also be a really good way, is to drink like a sports drink, even if you're only doing like 15 or 20 minutes instead of reserving that for longer workouts. That could really be a good strategy. So we'll keep working on ideas and testing your system.
My
Exactly.
wife laughs at me because I buy sports drinks by the case. And if I do yard work and sometimes I work up a sweat, a push
Yeah.
mower and all that stuff. And I'm always just sipping on a little sports drink. And it seems to really, my body likes that because it's got a little bit of, electrolytes, some sugar. Russell, when you started getting your metabolism back sort of in balance and you started reintroducing exercise, talk about that process and how important fueling was, and take us through that if you would.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is so interesting, like the concept of how, like Becca, you said, like even just thinking about exercise caused everything to kind of slow down for a sec. I've totally experienced this in myself. Like I'll be thinking about doing some climb this weekend or whatnot, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'll just start having these like deep hunger pangs, and like the hunger like begins 2 3 days before, and it's like just the stress of thinking about going up some big hill. So yeah, I mean, it's really complicated, but for me, it's like I think the recovery process. Dr. Cooper's given me so many tidbits over the years that like the biggest one she gave me, I'd say, is like just the concept of always having something in the tank and leaving something in the tank. And you don't need to go to 10 tenths every workout. Like, in fact, you can go to 2 tenths, and that's totally rad, you know? Um, and I actually, to this day, I use that a lot. Like, I think like last night I went to the climbing gym for a little bit, and I think I was there for 45 minutes and didn't really do that much. But it just felt good to move a little bit, like just because movement does feel good. And I remember when I was really, really sick, like 20 years ago, my cortisol, as Dr. Cooper was talking, like bottomed out, testosterone bottomed out. Like it was so bad to the point where like just walking around the block was actually kind of terrifying. Like I think back on that experience, and it's taken a long time, but like there was a lot of years where it was like post-traumatic stress to even talk about it with people because it was so gnarly. I really don't recommend the overtraining syndrome. It's the hardest thing I've ever been through, and to this day, like it's the reason I'm fully dedicated to taking care of myself and accepting that responsibility of taking care of oneself. But it's not just black and white. Like, you can't just eat clean and then exercise. It's like you got to pay attention to little signals. And for me, it's like I'm always thinking about, this is another Dr. Cooper thing, like just get out and like regulate your nervous system. And you don't need to go out with the mindset of quote unquote training. And I actually think there's a big thing here with like American culture with exercise. Structured exercise is a brand new thing in human history. Like humans are designed for movement, and that's a different mindset than going out and I am quote unquote training today. So I think just starting with walking, and then, wow, I've got good energy today. Let's do this. Let's jog for 3 minutes, like just the starting really basic, and like always remembering like leave gas in the tank. And part of that is just having fuel on board. So it's really interesting. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, that insight is really interesting, Russell. And I guess we can't overstate the importance of pre-fueling, during exercise or exertion fueling, and then recovery fueling as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Right. Actually, it appears that the exercise science community is slowly picking up on this, and that I was reading some research studies this last summer on Tour de France cyclists, and the most cutting edge research there, these guys are they're consuming like upwards of 140 grams of carbohydrates per hour of competition. And this is in total opposition to the way the culture's been historically, where they're like, oh, you need to do fasted training and quote unquote become a fat burner. And it's like, no, actually just showing the brain that you're safe. And then when you're doing this level of training, like, or competition, like consuming just this like
as much as you can,
unreal amount of carbohydrates. And I'm not cut out for that. I don't think my genetics would allow me to train at that level. But it just, that says a lot about where the consciousness is finally kind of picking up.
And when you look at guys like Michael Phelps, like look at that dude in a Speedo, and there's not an ounce of fat on that guy. He was eating something like 12,000 calories a day when he was training for the Olympics, which is like, 6 times the amount for a normal person.
Yep.
Go ahead, Russell.
Genetically blessed. Like his genetics allowed him to pile on that intensity and volume of exercise without triggering famine signals. And that's just not the case for everybody else. Even if you do eat 100 grams of carbs an hour, like you can still just trigger it just by training or exercising too hard. Yeah.
So if science is so obvious about all these things, how come doctors are still saying eat less, exercise more?
Well, and they say that without even knowing the person,
No,
kind of as
I mean,
Becca said.
everybody still says it. Like, you can see it. I could literally tell you that like 50 times a day, probably on TV or online or whatever, that's what you're going to see. How come you're
Right.
not eating less? How come you need all these drugs? How come they should just eat less, exercise more?
Yeah, and even we see with families, some of the kids get upset because maybe their sibling who doesn't have the weight challenge that they have,
How many
the two of them go to the doctor, and the doctor singles out the one with the higher weight and says, you really shouldn't be playing the video games. You really
Yeah.
need to get up and move. And that child is actually more active and being more careful about what they're eating. And so the kids get very upset about that, and I don't blame them. And the parents get really upset about being
Or
treated that way.
frustrated?
Well, it's beyond frustration.
Yeah.
It's disrespectful. But I mean, we all, regardless of our body size, ideally would be getting physical activity. Kind of, I like what Russell was saying about this workout versus incorporating physical activity. One of the other things we didn't mention is when you're doing workouts at the gym and you're on a treadmill or a machine and it's reading out, you're burning this many calories on the machine. Think of what that's doing also, potentially, if you're already vulnerable. So covering that up, a lot of people cover that up, might be a decent thing to do. But it's, we have the research. There's plenty of research in sports science with people who maybe aren't weight challenged, but they have done the studies looking at fueling and body composition and metabolic rate and body weight response. And what they show is the closer the athletes meet the energy needs around the workout, and also timing wise. So as Mark was saying, pre-fueling, during fueling, post-fueling, and cushioning the workout with adequate fuel and not being in an energy deficit is what leads to the lowest body fat percentages, the lowest overall weight levels, the best hormone balances in males and females. This has been established science in the sports science world for a long time. And yet when we take people who have the high body weight, the assumption is, well, they have all that weight, they could just burn that. They don't need to even eat. I mean, this is like the assumption. But unfortunately, people challenged like that, it's not that way. They're not authorized to use that fuel that they're carrying around in the body fat and the adipose tissue. They have to just carry that around. And then the rest of their body is starved for fuel. And so the science is there. It's just that I think that there's so much bias and so much preconception in the culture that it's so interfering even with doctors' ability to see what could be going on or to really listen to their patients about their patients' experiences. But it's as Russell said, just anticipating an exercise routine, it's known that that starts already, things in our body start adjusting chemically with just the plan of doing an exercise bout. And there's a lot of alterations to start freeing up energy for it, to start, changing our stress hormone balance, just with the anticipation of about to do a workout. So I think there's just a lack of scientific view and a lot of bias. So, and people also blame themselves a lot. It's not just other people blaming them. People have a lot of self-blame in this area, which I think it is hard to let go of when society is also trying to blame you all the time. But I think it comes from the medical community has a big responsibility in this to listen to the patient's stories and what they've been through and really do more digging deeper than just saying, well, you must be just eating the wrong thing or just eating too much and you're probably not exercising the right way or you're not exercising enough. I mean, that's pretty lazy, I think, as a lazy approach.
So, Russell, I'd like to know, what is the biggest misconception in your mind when it comes to exercise, and how do people know if they're doing too much exercise?
Totally. I think just fundamentally that more is always better, and that's not the case at all. Just to lean back into the exercise science literature for a sec, it's been known for a long time that exercise is actually a terrible weight loss tool. It's been known in the science for, I want to say 40 years, because they've done these studies where they show that even in rodent studies, where if you do a calorie restriction or add physical workload, the creature always replenishes that nutrition no matter what, or the calorie count, so to speak. And so, and that also, with the biological adaptations, if you're not replenishing those calories, what does the brain see? It just sees starvation. And the lens I always like to put on is through all of the history of life on Earth, and I believe in evolution, but it's malnutrition is the number one killer in the natural world. So you never, a grizzly bear doesn't go on a diet. A grizzly bear eats as much as possible, and so there's super, super powerful genetics to keep us alive from starvation events. And so it's to me, that's a really powerful way to look at it. I'm also a nerd, but I think what is the biggest misconception? It's just exercise is fundamentally a stress on the body and on your neuroendocrine system. And it has to be supported with nutrition and rest. And I'm actually, I love this field because I'm always still learning. I would really love to learn more about the physiological mechanisms underlying, like, why is it that even well-supported exercise in certain individuals still triggers metabolic dysfunction? And what is it in their genetics, and what is it in the epigenetics and their history of dieting or overtraining or underfueled exercise, you name it. There's so much to learn, but the fundamental thing is, like, if you think you're doing too much, there's the laboratory stuff where Dr. Cooper looks at people's labs and says, well, actually, you're doing too much. Like, here's all these famine signals. Your cortisol is kind of wonky, like testosterone's wonky or estrogen's wonky. But like for female athletes, for example, in my caseload right now, I had a young woman in my office last week who told me that last year she, her menstrual cycle stopped in response to training. And, I just had to put the exercise physiology lens back on and talk about rest and nutrition, and then refer her to a doctor, and that she needs to pay attention to these big data points. For my own body, it's usually when I'm just getting grumpy and tired and, just irritable. Those are like the little subtle signals I pick up on myself. And I'm like, okay, I actually need to take a day off here. But also, because I do have a sensitive system, the more training I pile on, I gain weight every single time. Particularly with my life's great passion in mountaineering and specifically snowboard mountaineering. I just can't get away with 15-hour days without some consequence to my metabolic system. And if I want to partake in those activities, I put a ton of structure into planning it and also recovering from it and fueling it. But these days I've noticed with the way my body works, I really thrive off of the 1 to 2 hour mountain bike rides, because I can get a full night of sleep. I can get multiple meals in before I do that. And I can be out in the woods and it's relaxing, and I'm not, in some gym worried about what some dude is thinking when he looks at me doing my exercise stuff. And it's I can just be free. And then,
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, some of these gyms just feel really toxic, honestly. But I like to remember that, again, pleasure is really important. Exercise should be super fun, it should be. In fact, if you want to talk about what is it that keeps people exercise adherence stuff, we'll just make it fun. What is it that you like to do? And movement should feel good. So. Yeah, I don't know, just adding humor and giggling back into life, and making all of it really fun. I think that humor and lighthearted side of it is actually a nutritional security signal in a funny way. It's just reducing the stress load of the workout,
So, Dr. Cooper, what's the one thing, I don't know if you could reduce it to one, but what's the one thing you want listeners to know about working with their metabolism instead of against it? For Becca, it was sometimes not doing exercise. But what's the one thing that you could maybe...
Wow, one thing is tough. It is
I know
tough.
it's hard, so maybe...
I could make it broad, really be taking care of yourself. But I think it is, the more I think about it, I think that the perspective is really, really important, because where you're coming from with it, what's your purpose of doing it? Right. And if that is just, you want to have fun, you want to get some fresh air, you want to move your body. I think that's a great place to come from. Of course, if it's to lose weight or something
that's
that,
sometimes misguided.
Probably going to backfire.
I think that the losing weight thing sometimes is misguided. I think that when that's your goal, I think that you're going to mess with your head a little bit
Well,
there.
well, but you have to be honest with yourself,
Yeah.
because you may think that's not in your head. This is the problem, is there's a lot of subconscious thoughts that go on for people, especially when they've been, well, for all people. Apparently, there have been enough scientific studies that show evidence in our brains of like panic, especially in women when they see like a person with a large body. Even if they're not affected and they've never had a large body, they've never been on a diet, they show that parts of the brain, the panic centers, light up. So I mean, we're all programmed, no matter how affected you are or not, we're all programmed to be overly body conscious,
You
overly,
can't help it.
well, overly striving for some kind of the quote perfect body, which is just a societal implant really in our culture. And not all cultures are this way. I mean, definitely our
Right.
culture is here in the US.
Yeah.
And some countries it's even worse than here, from what I hear. But so that's subconsciously in our mind. And so how do you detach, dismantle what you're doing with your food and your exercise, anything that affects your energy availability? How do you dismantle it from those thoughts, both the conscious and the subconscious thoughts? It's really hard. You've got to replace it with the opposite, basically, And this is kind of a trick that does work. It's funny, I have a lot of examples of this, but when I used to work with patients who had anorexia nervosa, they told me, we'd always joke around and say, think the opposite, do the opposite of what your brain's telling you to do. And they started implementing that, and it actually worked. It was like, okay, my brain's telling me this, I'm going to do the opposite. And every time they did that, it would strengthen their metabolism, because their tendency was under fuel, over exercise, So I think you really have to be super honest with yourself, and you've really got to come at this, if you're a sensitive person like this, from a really clear place of the intent behind it. And then you've got to support it, as Russell said, with all that fueling. And you have to think you can't overdo it. It's impossible to overdo the fueling. I know that sounds crazy, and we'll get a lot of hate mail probably about that. What? You're telling people with high body weight you can't overdo the fueling? If your body is like what Becca's story is, you cannot overdo the fueling. It's that you have to fuel and err on the side. If you're not sure, have some more.
I mean, because I can tell you, I know I was under fueling. Like having learned all of this, especially while I was doing dieting at the same time, like I know I was extremely under fueling. Like, and Russell, I think hearing your story is so informative, because like doing anything beforehand, I mean, I was literally rolling out of bed, throwing on clothes and going and working out with my trainer. I was not eating anything beforehand.
No.
I was not doing anything in order to fuel before. I was slightly fueling after, but like I hated breakfast. Like this was not a thing. Like, so fueling was not top of mind. So
I don't think most people eat before they work out.
yeah,
I think I could say that confidently.
Well,
yeah.
and then what happens after a night of fasting, your leptin levels are low, your ghrelin levels high until you eat. And if you're not fueling that workout, you're already kind of going into energy conservation.
Yeah.
You're triggering the energy conservation by trying to expend fuel when even your blood sugar may not be stable. But anyway, I
Most
mean, I
people
think,
have a cup of coffee and go to the gym.
yeah, I think it's like keeping it lighthearted. Don't be too obsessed, because then you're going to just like feel stressed out about it. I think just try to keep it lighthearted and just say, okay, if I didn't fuel well the day before, I probably should skip this workout. Same thing if you didn't sleep well. Skip the workout that day and then do a better job and then try again. And you have to be patient too, like for poor Becca, this has been years, and Russell, you've had years of this insult happening, on top of genetic vulnerabilities. And so I know for Russell, it took years to get the overtraining syndrome to recover. I mean, much longer than usual, but it's because of I think the extreme extreme sports, when you think about that, you talk about a 15-hour climb, think of how many calories you really have to eat. Probably 20,000 calories in the day to not go into some kind of a stress reaction. So, especially if you have a repeated, history of that. And then for poor Becca, it's just like took a long time because starting out, because of those habits on top of the genetics, it just ended up where our leptin does not recover overnight. I mean, and our hormones don't change overnight because as Russell said, it's protecting us from one of the biggest threats, to our species, to any organism, is the threat of starvation. And so it takes a long time to get those gears to change, and which is why we love pharmacology, because without the pharmacology, it might never change. We need to introduce pharmacology because our own lifestyle strategies, while they are helpful and supportive, they're not powerful enough to reverse that dysfunction by themselves.
Are you sure, Dr. Cooper? Shouldn't people just work out harder and eat less?
Yeah, they should definitely cut out even the carrots and the berries and all that stuff.
I'm
There's
sorry, I
carbs
could
in
not
there.
resist that. We're just about at time, so I'd love our final comments to be somewhat brief. But Becca and Russell, you guys have been so kind and amazing to share your stories with us. I'd love just the final takeaway. Let's start with Becca. What would you tell someone who's stuck in this cycle, who maybe is listening to their doctor who's saying, eat less, exercise more? Talk to that person stuck in this cycle who is so defeated and so frustrated that they're eating less and gaining weight.
Um, Honestly, I have recommended so many people to Dr. Cooper's practice because I'm like, this is the only place that I have been able to find actual people who will listen to me and understand what I'm going through. So I would say, if not there, talk to at least someone else because they don't understand what you're actually going through. That's what I have found, because not everybody is the same, not everybody responds the same way, and that's what's important. And I think that's what people really need to understand.
Yeah, and I see an optimism in your face, Becca. I feel like you're in a good place right now.
Oh yeah, no, I'm in a great place. I have more energy than I've ever had before. I am in I'm in a weight currently, and I don't base my happiness off of my weight. Like, let's be clear. Like, it just happens to be that I'm also at a weight that haven't been since college, which I also think is ridiculous because I didn't expect to be that low. So, and Dr. Cooper's like, no, you still have more to lose. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. But it's really more. I'm like, I just wanted my knees to feel better. Like, that was one of the real reason I went to Dr. Cooper. I'm like, I just want my knees to hold out so that I don't have to get knee replacement surgery like in my 40s. So let's go. And so I've been seeing her for almost a decade now, and we've been great making gradual progress, and some years go better than others, and that's great. But I just want to make sure that I can have as much energy as possible and get around, and things just keep getting better and better.
That's awesome. Russell, what's the big takeaway for you?
I think, like Becca said, like it's just decoupling your self-esteem from your body weight as much as you possibly can, because by the way, you're born as a complete human being, and you'll live complete and you'll die complete. Like, I really believe that. Like, the way our society stigmatizes elevated weight and all that, like I see it every single day in my work. And I also have referred so many people to Dr. Cooper. What I'm learning is that like everybody's life story is so unique, and I think just for me, active listening and listening to people's stories, like why are they addicted to their cycle of working out hard and trying to lose weight? Like, is it maybe they had a little childhood bout with obesity and it's kind of gotten into their head like a brainworm, like, but I think just, again, like the science is so powerful. Like, if we can really tap into people's executive function and say, so if this is something that really matters to you and you care about, here's what the science says. And what Dr. Cooper said, like, you can't fuel too much. Like, I really love how that's just gonna like really irritate a lot of people to hear that. But again, like the science fully supports it. Like the Tour de France folks, they're forcefully like over fueling. Like that's actually where the literature is right now and where the culture is. And they're they're trying to get as many carbs in as possible per hour of training and competing. So the science is really clear. Like exercise should not be used as a weight loss tool. It should be used as a performance and health tool. Foremost.
That's great. Thanks, Russell. Andrea, what's your takeaway?
More and more, it's like the counterintuitive thing of it's not calories in and calories out anymore. People, it's all about your metabolism. And it just drives me crazy when it's the eat less, exercise more. I just am so tired of hearing that. And people being yelled at by a doctor for that, and then shamed about taking a GLP-1 drug because their metabolism is broken. And it's upsetting to me still. It's like, get with the program. Time has changed. That's my issue. And like thinking about exercise as one more thing that is part of our interesting scientific toolbox.
Later today, I have an appointment with Dr. Cooper's exercise physiologist because my metabolism is stable now, thanks to Dr. Cooper, and we're going to start to really work on those health parameters to try to strengthen my heart and do all that good stuff. And I agree, Andrea. I mean, if you guys listening are counting calories and getting on the scale every day and worried about those carbs, I really want to urge you to reconsider that lifestyle, because that worry of food and that fear of weight is really going to backfire. And as Dr. Cooper has said so many times, your brain cares about one thing, and that is being secure with its state of calorie intake. So if for whatever reason your brain is worried, it's not going to look at your fat store as something it can burn. It's going to do something else. So that's why fueling is so important. That's why post recovery fueling is so important. Your brain cares about one thing. It doesn't want to starve. And if for whatever reason it's getting some crazy signals, it's going to backfire against you. So I just love how we get to have these conversations. And we say this a lot, but food is our friend, and food should be rewarding and fun and enjoyable, and so should life.
Right.
And I just really love the perspective that you have, Russell, and Becca, you as well. And it's been so great to have you on the show. Dr. Cooper, I'd love to give you the final word.
Well, I hope people can just be good to themselves. And as Andrea said, we should know better by now. And when you go to the doctor, they shouldn't be just giving you that canned response without really knowing who you are, what you're about, what your struggles have been. But if that does happen, don't take it personally, because I hear too many stories. Just this week, I heard a lot of stories about people that had been to the doctor and had horrific experiences. Fortunately, a lot of doctors today are much more aware of obesity as a metabolic disease, and they're looking closer at that, and they're talking more in the scientific terms around it. But there's still a lot of practitioners out there that still have that old school thinking of calorie in, calorie out, and shaming people. So if you happen to be exposed to that, as hard as it is, do not take it personally, and just move on and believe in yourself. And the other thing to think about is that we just need to think that metabolic problems can occur in people of all body sizes. So we also don't want to have that thinking that it's only people with a high body weight that have some kind of metabolism issue, because people like Russell, for example, and Mark, you don't really, you have a different weight excursion where it goes up somewhat and comes back down, but you're not in that same high weight prone category, yet you do have metabolic problems and metabolic syndrome type of issues affecting things like cardiovascular health, blood pressure, testosterone, all of that. So we kind of got to get our thinking out of this whole. There's so many problems basically with the way we perceive, weight issues and health issues. And so I just think believe in yourself, be kind to yourself, fuel your body. If you can't fuel it or for whatever reason, don't go and expose yourself to the stress of a workout. Step back, correct the issue, and try again.
Wow. I've learned so much from you guys during the past hour. I love what you said, Russell. If you're looking at exercise as a weight loss tool, you're looking at it wrong. And and if your doctor is telling you to eat less and exercise more, go find a different doctor. Let's just be honest about it, because they clearly don't understand human physiology. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate it. And I'd love to stay in touch, Becca and Russell. Get back in touch in a future episode with you guys. I think it'd be fun. But to everyone, thanks for another edition of Fat Science.
No diets, no agendas, just science that makes you feel better.